What do you think of when you hear the term badass? Now, before we answer that question, I want to ask, have you caught the most recent episodes? So we've had this great run, got more great guests coming up, but a few episodes back, Jennifer McClure discussed networking, personal branding, and career changes after 50. So really, really important topic for a lot of us. I shared how my wife and I became debt free. So I can't say it will work for everyone, but I definitely share what worked well for us. And Dr. Ellen Albertson, also known as the Midlife Whisperer, shared what people who are absolutely rocking midlife do differently and what we can learn from them. So back to my original question. What do you think of when you hear the term badass? Do you think of the leather clad rocker on the Harley, Navy SEALs, mixed martial artists? How about the middle-aged person you see in the mirror every morning? Craig Sweeney, founder of Over 50 Badass, challenges us to unleash our inner badass simply by living the best life we can live and being the person we know we can be. So he and I discuss the high school reunion that really became the genesis for Over 50 Badass, getting out of those midlife ruts, how to approach changing jobs or careers in midlife, and moving past those who don't want us to change or improve. Now, by the way, as you might guess, there's a little bit more swearing than usual, but nothing that wouldn't be acceptable in a PG movie. So, are you ready to become the badass you were meant to be? Let's get started. Welcome to Midlife Mastery. This is Brock Edwards, and today I've got Craig Sweeney. Craig, can you do just a quick introduction about yourself? Who are you and what are you up to?
Yeah, well, I'll lead with my age because this is Midlife Mastery. So I'm a Gen Xer, 54 years old, residing in the beautiful state of Wisconsin. And I, about 2 years ago now, started a niche media company called Over 50 Badass and started off with an email newsletter. We are actually, I will say, rejiggering the whole platform right now and coming out with a new community platform that will consist of the email newsletter and upcoming podcast, some courseware, online courseware, and some other neat things, virtual and in-person events on down the road a bit. But just looking at life, I think, from the perspective of the glass, being not half full, but certainly more than half full. And so I think there's so many folks out there that think of aging in midlife as a point whereby which everything is downhill from here. And I certainly haven't hit my stride yet. And my future is bright. And I want to kick some ass for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And I want to take others along on the ride and hear their stories and hear how they're doing it. And just applaud the people that have that same attitude. And maybe, lift some other folks up that have gotten a little bit down with their midlives or feel that they need a kick in the pants, if you will, and a reminder that, for God's sakes, we're only, we're in midlife. We don't have a foot in the grave yet, folks. Let's still get out there and really do shit. I mean, apologize, Brock, in advance. I tend to let an S word fly here and there or something. So if you need to bleep me out, you go right ahead.
We're good. Well, it's Over 50 Badass. Definitely taking a stand that a lot of media companies, platforms wouldn't. So let me ask, why did you choose the name? And beyond the name, what was the impetus that made you say, no, I got to go do this?
So, okay, the genesis of Over 50 Badass, and I'll try to keep this as short as possible. I was invited to my 35th high school reunion. This was about 3 years ago now, so I was 51 at the time. And as one does when a big reunion is coming up, you tend to make connections on Facebook with former classmates that you haven't heard from for quite some time. And I started in these groups on Facebook hearing about my former classmates and former friends' aches and pains, how they're getting out of bed and it's not as easy as it used to be. Complaining about certain things, being overweight or what have you, and how they can't wait to retire, take their pension, spend all day fishing, go up to the lake, buy that RV, whatever it may be. And I turned to my then fiance, now wife, and I said, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I said, "We are 51 years old, and I've got this group of classmates that's acting as though we're 80. And I could not believe it. I was actually pretty appalled. I've never been one to, and I've always been pretty healthy. So I've been blessed with that. And I know some people aren't as healthy. So, there are legitimate concerns as we go older. And that's not something that I want to ignore with Over 50 Badass. But certainly I was, the perspective of life being on the downslide was completely foreign to me. And hearing people that I once was close to, and in some instances still am, take that viewpoint or have that attitude really hit me hard. And being a writer, a creative writer, somebody who's developed copy, worked in the advertising space for quite some time, I said, I've got to do something about this. There's got to be a group of people out there that feel the same way I do. And I know there were. I mean, there's people that I hang around with. There, and my wife and I tend to hang around with folks in their 40s primarily. But I couldn't believe this, and I said, I'm going to go out, set out to find my group, my tribe, my gang, and we can help some other folks along the way realize that, hey, things aren't as gloomy as they may seem as you're hitting your 50s or 55, 60 years old, whatever it is. I want to do that. So I started writing an email newsletter. The tone of the newsletter, the name Over 50 Badass, quite frankly, was fairly calculated. I really think that as we were talking earlier, Brock, there's not a lot out there that discusses the transition into midlife, out of midlife, into your senior age category. That's really, in my opinion, valuable. Other than certain things, like we talked about, pharmaceutical focused articles and think tanks, et cetera, that I feel come at the subject in a very, I guess, pseudo-educational, almost non-profit-y type of way, if you will. There's not a strong brand out there that really talks to this issue, this age group, this demographic. I look at AARP and I was talking to somebody early on, and they said, you want to be an alternative to AARP, right? And I said, that's somewhat it, right? I think AARP does some fantastic things. I mean, I resisted AARP for a damn long time. Those envelopes would start flying into the mailbox at 45, and they'd go straight to the circular file at home. Just because I was like, hell no, I'm not paying a senior price for coffee at McDonald's, and I'll pay full price for the movie. Thank you very much. I'm not old, and I still to this day I'm still not an AARP member. Although my attitude is somewhat softened to that. But the whole tenor, the way I talk to folks is not in a preachy way, where I've got all the answers. I'm talking to my audience like I would talk to somebody sitting next to me at the bar, at the pub, over a glass of beer. The people that I want to help with Over 50 Badass aren't, in general, and I'm going to put air quotes around that, aren't in general the folks that have a life coach, the folks that may seek out other, literature, other articles. They might not have a career coach, and I'd say probably don't have a career or life coach. These are folks that maybe have been working on, I'm going to use a Milwaukee reference because I'm sitting here, working on the line at say Harley Davidson for 30 years, and wake up one day and they say, holy shit, I am unhappy. I don't like what I'm doing. I need to make a change, just from a psychological perspective, or I need to make a change from a financial perspective because I'm certainly not ready financially to retire. So there's reasons people in midlife either have to or want to make a big change. And a lot of us are completely paralyzed when we think about making those big either career or life changes, right? And I think there needs to be resources that talk to people in a real way and really kind of help them take that first step, if that makes sense. And that's what I'm setting out to do here at Over 50 Badass.
Yeah, it seems like so much of the advice, the information out there is getting back to zero, like taking something that's broken and just making it good enough. It's not, how do you do this great? How do you keep accelerating? How do you make this the absolute best time of your life? The rest of it seems to be about just getting through, gutting it out till you retire, till you die, whatever. It's not about, so much of it isn't about, ramping up, bringing out your inner badass, as you were talking about. Why is that? I mean, I know we go through life, we get in ruts, we develop bad habits, whatever, but not, we kind of hit this point where we do wake up and go, I'd like something a little different. I don't see myself doing this for another 20, 30 years. Where do we tend to get in our own way?
I think what you said, kind of hits the nail on the head. We do get these ruts, and I think it's a combination of our own reticence to change. And some of that's I'm going to attribute to just sheer laziness. The fact that we're kind of in our stride in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. Our job is, we look at our job as good. It's paying the bills. We're putting money into our 401k. But and you've got the kids and the spouse, if you're lucky, that kind of distract you maybe from your unhappiness at times, from your from your I guess averageness. And I think we wake up when some of those outside distractions are possibly gone. Your kids are grown, maybe they're off to university, or they moved out and got a place of their own. And we have more time with ourselves. And quite frankly, when we do have more time with ourselves, then that's when, those big gotchas come in, and you wake up and you're like, holy crap, I got to do something. I've got, 40 years left, and I'll kill myself if I have to go to this job one more day. And the problem with that is, most of us haven't made changes in quite a while. And the ability or even the know-how to take those steps isn't there, or has been long forgotten. And in addition to that, you've got the cultural pressures of either your friend group or your work group, your church group, your family saying, what the hell are you doing? You've got this great job. You guys have a great house. You're fine. What are you complaining about? And so they're looking at you like, you're crazy to want to make a change. And a lot of times those forces, and they mean well most of the time. Some of the time they don't, but they mean well most of the time. But they are keeping a lot of us from making those changes that we either need or want to make.
Yeah, it occurs to me that, and I just, thinking of random stuff, the line from the song "Me and Bobby McGee" by Janis Joplin, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And, when I was in my 20s, like, I had no money. I could switch jobs. I mean, there was nothing to lose, and it was all upside. And yet I can see, looking around at my peers, you hit to 50, you're probably comfortable, probably have a mortgage, car payments, college payments, whatever. Hopefully a pretty decent paying job. Hopefully you're kind of on the high end. You've been working your way up the pay scale. And, that's hard to put at risk. It seems like we, at this age, we often just change when life kicks us in the head. We get divorced, we lose our job, we get downsized, whatever. I don't know. I guess I'm wondering, how do we initiate that change before the world forces us to change?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, when I look at the word badass, and I get confused by, I don't want to be a badass. I don't want to buy a Harley. I don't want to, dress in black and go to rock shows every weekend. That's not what this is. So making a change could be as simple as reconnecting with your badassery, if you will. So, for instance, I used to race. I used to be a skier. I've not skied for a few years now. And that was something that I felt badass doing. Whatever that is, identify your badassery, identify those things that really you were passionate about while you were younger. You don't have to make sweeping changes with your life. There's plenty of us that I call badasses that are completely happy with their current job, with their spouse and what have you, but there's something missing. Maybe they have lost that passion, right? So, my suggestion is, what did you used to do when you were younger that you just got so much joy out of, or you kicked ass at, that you haven't done for a while? Let's just go and dust that off, pick it up. And, maybe, you're probably not going to do it as well. And you might pull a muscle now that we're 54, but, do it. Just reconnect with your badass self. I apologize. I have a dog barking on that. But if that makes sense, the changes don't always have to be huge sweeping changes.
So within that, going for the small changes or reconnecting with the things that used to bring joy, the things that we used to really care about. One of the things you mentioned is that sometimes people with the best of intentions will kind of, if not discourage, at least not actively encourage.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have people in our lives that do discourage. And I think there's certainly multiple reasons, and some of them are good reasons, but a lot of them are their own fear that you're going to outgrow them. That maybe they've got the fear of making change. They've got the fear of really stepping out into your midlife in a confident way, and they fear that they're going to get left behind, so they discourage you. And so I think there's a lot of that going on, and they're wanting to maintain this status quo. That hey, this person's going to make changes, grow, and they'll really grow out of our friendship or our relationship. And I think that there's an issue there. And then there's the old saying, you are the sum of the people the 5 people that you hang around with. And there is some of that. So I think you need to look at your tribe, and if they're discouraging you from setting big goals at midlife or making changes in a positive way. I mean, certainly there's positive and negative changes, but if you're looking to make positive changes and you're being discouraged, then you have to look at, hey, maybe that's somebody that I shouldn't be associating with quite as frequently or quite as deeply. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Well, when we think about kind of redefining, rediscovering ourselves, like I said, sometimes the world foists it on us. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we get to make those choices in the calm of things. One of the things that a lot of people, I think, our age face is career. It's easy to be comfortable in a career. It's easy to kind of get to the box canyon of your career. You've made it so far, and you're probably not going to make it a lot further where you are, either from your own comfort or just that's about as far as you're going at that company. So I don't know how far this goes into your area of expertise, but what advice do you have, or what have you seen for people that are, wanting to change careers at this time of life, and whether they're comfortable or they've just been kicked out of their job or whatever it is? For a lot of people, they've probably been in that job for a while and aren't up on job hunting or where they should even look or how to present themselves when the world's going, yeah, we'd like someone younger. Kind of a rambling question, but when we think about redefining career as a part of that, where to start?
Yeah, it's a complicated question, but really you are spot on when you talk about, many of us have not been on the job search for many, many years. And it's different when we hit this midlife stage. Ageism is a real thing, despite the data that shows that an intergenerational workforce is much more productive than a strictly younger workforce. I've seen ageism in practice being in the advertising space for many, many years. I was a senior vice president for an agency about 10 years ago. And, in my early 40s, I felt ancient in that space. So, there are certain industries where it's more prevalent than others, but certainly across the board, ageism is a prevalent issue in this country and indeed all around the world. Actually, we recently took on an investment from a European investor to look into this further and to bring to market a job and resource platform for folks in this that will address this exact issue. So that's something we're really looking at right now. You need to market yourself differently as you enter middle age. You need to market your skills and your experience not in a linear fashion like you did when you were younger. You need to not speak to, hey, 35 years in this role at this company so blatantly. You believe, you believe that that's a feather in your cap, and you do believe, and I'm not saying it's not true, but you believe that is something that is looked on favorably. But corporate America will look at that and look at it differently in that, this person, like it or not, is older, and that either outright or latent ageism can creep in. So, you need to not hide your age, if you will, but certainly learn how to message your experience and skill set in a different way than you did when you were 35 years old, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know everyone's situation is different, but what are some of the general advantages of, those of us who are over 50 bring to the workplace?
Yeah, so I think the workplace is changing. I think, COVID has certainly changed the workplace tremendously. I think the age, whether or not you're 30, 40, 50, or 60, the age of going into the office, working 9 to 5, and in many instances collecting a paycheck with a good insurance package can be a thing of the past. We're not going to go back to where we were pre-COVID. I think the opportunities that exist for somebody at midlife or older to take their experiences and their skills that they've developed over the course of 30, 40 years and really parlay that into a fantastic second half in terms of the ability to either freelance, the ability to, buy that franchise maybe that you've been eyeing up for 25 years but never had the guts to make that change and do that. The ability to do remote work, that's something that I see as I look to midlife and beyond. Certainly Brock, yourself, myself, we can do this from anywhere. And those types of career changes are something that we as a group in midlife need to embrace. Not everybody can make those changes. I understand that some people have to go and get that traditional 9 to 5 job, but there are opportunities out there that are legitimate now, whereas even 10 years ago, and certainly pre-COVID, to say, hey, I'm going to quit this 9 to 5, or I was downsized for whatever reason, possibly ageism, and I'm going to open up my own shop, hang out my own shingle. The attitude about that has changed, and I think COVID has done a great job in changing that attitude. I think it's given a lot of us the ability or the freedom to make the change. If that's if something good has come out of these past 15 months or so, I think that's it. I think it's given some of us the freedom. Some of us, it's been forced to make the change, right? But even us that haven't been forced to make a change, it's given us the freedom and the ability to do that. And I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture, obviously, because certainly this has been difficult, from an economic standpoint, from a health standpoint. But there has been some positives that have come out of COVID from a career standpoint, especially with our demographic. And I think that those opportunities are only going to increase as we move forward and come out of this pandemic.
It was interesting watching companies go from there's no way people can work remotely to the very next day, y'all just pack up your computers and go home now, okay?
Yeah.
And I mean, the change was overnight. Even very conservative, big, slow-moving industries were just suddenly remote, and it all worked. And they just needed something to push the decision. And it certainly does seem to have the potential for opening up a lot of a lot of opportunities on where you live, what you're doing, how you're doing. Is there a way that you've noticed? I mean, I know you said you're working on a job board and a platform to really take advantage of it. Because it strikes me that, living wherever and looking for a job wherever, well, it was easier in the sense that it was a lot more narrowed when it's like, I live in this city, I'll look in this city for a job versus, what's available on the planet. Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, and that's a problem. There's a plethora of resources out there to identify opportunities globally. But to somebody who has taken that big giant leap and left a career, been forced out, and are kind of lost and searching for what to do, it's really important to build a strong network. For so long, I think many of us have confined our network to folks that are in the same industry or even the same company or the same role that we have been in for the last 30 years. And in order to really, really excel in our second halves, I think we need to learn how to expand that network. So look at networking with folks that maybe are not in your role, that certainly aren't just in working for the same company that you do. Start to identify folks in certain other careers that you are interested in. Start going to meetups. Really reach out via LinkedIn or Facebook. There's a plethora of LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups that you can join. But start networking in those areas that you have an interest in for the next 30 years. So, if you want to get out of, you don't want to be a CPA any longer, but you're interested in designing websites, just as an example, start networking with other folks that are doing that. A lot of times we have this insular network, and we need to really broaden that. And that means geographically as well. It's much easier than one might think to develop a strong network of folks outside of your current geography and outside of your current role and vertical market. So if I can leave you with one thing, I think that's the most important thing, is develop that super strong network. And don't be afraid, add value to the network, but don't be afraid to strike up conversations. Opportunities present themselves in the strangest ways sometimes, but you need to be open to the opportunities. You need to open yourselves up to discussion, and open yourselves up to really having a virtual coffee with people and asking them their experience and how they got to where they're at now. And geographically, if you're thinking about moving somewhere, there are places that you can go online that will help you identify people and groups in those areas that will make that transition much easier for you.
So, what are you working on in your own life on becoming more badass at? What are you trying to tap into?
Yeah, it's funny. So over 50 badass, and I'm kind of identified as over 50 badass. And as we move forward with this platform, I plan on having more content developers and creators on the badass platform, so that I'm certainly not the only voice that's coming out of our organization. I don't want to hear myself talk constantly, and I'm sure everybody else doesn't either. So I think I want to assemble a collective of badasses, if you will, that each bring to the table a unique viewpoint, a unique experience, and value that they can bring to our audience. And that's what we're going to do moving forward as we bring this new platform to the midlife audience here. So pretty excited about that. That's what we've been burning the candle on both ends with. And as far as being more badass in my personal life, I gotta get back to that. Get dust off my skis and get out there and do some more of those things that I was passionate about when I was younger. I preach that and I know it in my head, but I haven't skied for 3 years, and I need to do that. So I've got to eat my own dog food, if you will.
Well, it is a nice reminder that it feels like you just need to be more intentional. Like, I don't know, when I was a kid, there was like 3 things that I did, right? It was easy to do those things, but now as an adult, as a parent, as a husband, I got a job, got interest, and I just go in a million different directions. It's easy to go. Yeah, I mean, for me, I love mountain biking, but it's easy to go, oh, it's rainy this weekend. It's hot this weekend. I've got to clean the garage. Got all this other stuff to do. And suddenly 3 months have gone by. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's easy.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think one thing that I think we could do to help us with that would be to, identify, a group of guys that, like the same things that you do, that you can say, hey, we're gonna set a date and we're gonna do this, every couple of weeks, come hell or high water, and then razz each other if you don't make it because you have to go to the store or something. So I think I could use a little bit of that, So if you were closer, I'd go mountain biking with you, man.
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier before we started recording, and I don't know if anyone remembers the movie Roadside Prophets. I guarantee I'm probably one of about 5 people that saw it. It was a great movie, tons of cameos, but with John Doe from the band X, and was it Adam Horvitz from the Beastie Boys? I mean, it had I'm blanking on everyone. I mean, everyone from Timothy Leary had a cameo in it. David Carradine from Kung Fu had a cameo in it. John Cusack had a cameo in it. Everybody kind of on the fringes showed up there. But anyway, the theme of the movie and getting to the very end, the advice given to the John Doe's character was, get yourself a friend. And that was just, I don't know. It struck me then. I was in my 20s when I saw it. Now that I'm 50, it strikes me even harder. Just, for a lot of us, our friends are still the people we went to high school and college with, and maybe, that one person at work or whatever. It's easy to get to this stage in life, or I think a lot of us end up in this stage in life where we don't have the connections that we had when we were younger. They're harder to come by, or our friends, they moved away. There were couples friends, couples get divorced, we kind of bleed friends as we go through life, but that connection is so important. And we were talking a little bit earlier just about, isolation, loneliness that can come from it, getting stuck in a rut, if we don't have a group of friends to motivate us to come drag us out of the house and go have some fun or whatever it is, so from your experience and how do we solve that problem? And that sounds really weird to, be asking someone in their 50s, how do you make a friend? But
no, that's a great question. And as we were talking before, this is a big problem, especially, and I'm not discounting, this issue, with our female listeners, but it's a big problem with men. A lot of times, you've been on this career track and you haven't forged those deep friendships. I think it's easier for women to do that for whatever reason it is, right? I think they allow themselves to open up more to other women, to talk about what might be bothering them emotionally or physically or what have you. Whereas we've always been taught to keep things inside and not, everything's great. How's it going? Oh, great. It comes natural that it comes out of your mouth, oh yeah, kicking ass. Yeah. Everything's awesome. In reality, you're going through something, and it's hard for men to open up to other men about that. And that's a question that, my gosh, you and I are going to be able to answer on a podcast, but the ability to make a connection, to make a friend is a tough thing. I think it's somewhat, I guess, akin to dusting off that badassery that you had about, surfing or mountain biking or skiing or whatever that thing was, punk rock, whatever. Although at 55, if I'm wearing a mohawk, I might be looked at a little weird, but you can reconnect with some of those people that you used to do those badass things with. And they, quite frankly, I'd love to hear from you. It's just like if you're in a sales job and you don't want to do a cold call, pick up the damn phone, send a Facebook message. I mean, if you feel weird about, picking up the phone, send them a Facebook message. Hey man, it's been 20 years. I see your family on Facebook. You guys seem like you're, enjoying things. Love to get together, and I know that sounds simple and this isn't sage advice for anybody, but you'd be surprised that other, that other person on the other end of that Facebook message would probably be so psyched to get it from you, and I guarantee you're going to make those reconnections, if you will. And I think that's one way to go about it. And I think because you do have that shared history, from those old friendships, once they're reconnected, I think the ability to open up to each other at that point is much greater in many instances than with somebody who is a newer friend, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation here, Craig. And so let me ask, where can people find you, find the platform? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so you can find me at Craig at over50badass.com, over50badass on Twitter, on Instagram, Craig Sweeney on Instagram. Go to the platform at over50badass.com, sign up for our newsletter. We're going to be coming out with a new platform within 6 weeks, some really fun stuff, and I'll be leaking that out as we move forward into the summer here. But really, really excited about it. So we'll be bringing you some fun stuff. And I think if anybody can take anything, you also have to, come at this with a dose of humor. So some of our writing and some of our content is going to, we don't always have to be so serious. We can, take ourselves a little less seriously at times and just go out there and kick some ass.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for being on, Craig. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Brock. I appreciate you having me, man. I'm gonna have to have you on mine as well.
Excellent. Look forward to it.